What's up guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I'll be turning this one sample into 3 different genres, and I'll be showing you how to flip samples and how to turn them into cool and unique track ideas. But let's not waste any more time and hop straight into the DAW. First of all, this is a sample we'll be using today, and I've actually made it myself. It's got this really nostalgic vibe to it. Reminds me a bit of that kind of old school video game type music, which is actually perfect for the jungle I'll be making as well. If we look at the sample itself, you'll see it's very simple. The chords are just some basic triad chords with 7th notes on top, as you can see here. The chord preset is just a saw wave with some unison voices and some detune. There's a slow LFO that modulates a filter cutoff here, and there's a random which is slightly modulating the pitch as well. For the effects, the only thing that's on it is a chorus. And then there's these 3 flute kind of sounds, each playing a different melody on top. The first one sounds like this. The second one sounds like this. And this is the third one. But let's move on to the first track I'll be making. The first track I'll be making is a French house track. I've always loved Daft Punk and the sampling techniques they've used throughout the years. One of my favorite tracks is Voyager off the Discovery album, so I'll be taking a bit of inspiration from that for this track. Alright, we got our sample here, and the first thing I'm going to do is go down here and pitch our sample down 2 semitones. Pitching is a common technique when sampling to change the vibe of the original sample. For this kind of track, you want to chop the sample up to both create a nice melody, but also a funky groove. And to do that, I'll swing the chops too. For French house, you really want to emphasize the rhythm and groove here. So yeah, as you can hear already, I've changed up the rhythm and the melody, and that creates a whole different type of sound. I'm pretty happy with this chop now, and this is what we got. I've changed up the chord progression in this chop as well. I pretty much made a halftime. The original loop was 8 bars, with each chord lasting 2 bars, and this chop is 4 bars now. The first 2 chords pretty much play a bar each, while the 3rd chord leads on to the 4th chord, and it repeats itself for the last section here. It's really about finding the right parts in the sample to create the groove you're looking for, and the parts of the sample that have cool melodies that you can put next to each other and manipulate. Like, I personally really like this fill melody at the end here. I think it has a sick rhythm and melody, but it's all about messing around and experimenting until you find something that you're satisfied with. To process the sample for French house, there's only 2 things on it. We got the RC20 for the retro effects, and down here we have a low-cut EQ. I made this really cool bass with these 2 layers, and it sounds like this. Kind of following the bass notes from the sample, but it's got some other notes here and there to create the movement. The first layer is a sub, and it sounds like this. It's just a saw wave in Vital. It's got a dirty filter on it, which is modulated by the envelope, and it's got some multiband compression and some distortion. On the effects, we just have a bark of dog to boost the low end a little bit. Our second layer is kind of like a slap bass. It sounds like this. Except it's just a preset in Bitwig. There's both some decapitator and some kilohertz distortion on there. And then we're cutting out the low, so only the sub plays the low frequencies. The 3 together sound like this. You can really hear that funk now. To save some time, I've just dragged in some drum loops. This is what they sound like together. The main loop sounds like this originally, and I just added a tape cassette for the retro effect. We got this second layer here, and lastly just the vinyl effects. Quickly added this RC20 onto the master to give it a bit more lo-fi effect. The very last thing I've done is adding a sidechain to the melodic elements, and the full thing sounds like this now. literally only 6 layers on this idea. Okay, a bit more because the sample itself, right? But you get the idea. It goes to show you really don't need too much going on in a track to make it sound full and good. It's more about the individual elements. Let's move on to the next genre. Next, I'll be making a lo-fi girl type beat. This is infinitely more chill and so much more different than French house. But that's the art of sample chopping, that you can make it fit anything. I'll start with the sample chopping again. Let's pitch it up a few semitones this time. For this style, you don't need as much groove going on like previously, so the chop will only be basic grooves and something that complements the slow moving beat. But let's get into the chopping. For this chop, in the first section, the chord progression doesn't actually change. As you can hear when I play it, it's the same chord progression, but just chopped up a few places. But for this section here, I introduce a filler chord at the end of the bar. It sounds like this. And that repeats itself for the rest of the chop, kind of like a motif. The last section here, I pitched down 5 semitones as you can see down here, and that introduces a new chord that wasn't a part of the original chop. So yeah, the full chop sounds like this. It sounds pretty cool in my opinion. To process this sample, I first of all have an RC20, then we got a vinyl, we got a filter, and we got a reverb. That makes it go from this to this. Now it's really lo-fi. I've added this glidey melody on top, which sounds like this. It's a saw and square wave inside Tal Uno LX, and that's filtered down a bit. The glidey effect comes from the portamento here, and there's some delay down here as well. On the effects we have a distortion and a bit of reverb too. Underneath I've added the smooth sustained bass, which sounds like this. It just follows the bass notes from the sample. And it's time to add some lo-fi drums. And that's this beat done. Another simple beat, but it doesn't need to be more complicated than that. Shows how you can make interesting sounds and get ideas down fast. Now let's move on to the final track. The jungle/breakcore sound is characterized by the wavy pad sounds on top of the nasty breaks. To chop up the sample for jungle, you need to let it flow a bit more, but here and there I'm going to add a glitchy rhythm to it. First I'm going to pitch it down 3 semitones. I messed around with the progression a little bit, and it sounds like this now. For the effects, there's also just a basic RC20. I have this cool thing in mind which I'm quickly going to try. It sounds crazy right now, but bear with me. Crazy glitch effect. I've added this smooth 808 bass underneath. It follows the progression of the sample. I've added a whopping 6 breakbeat samples on this track, so let me play them all through. This is 2 breaks alternating every 2 bars for some variation. It's a common technique in jungle to switch between breakbeats. This is a very famous fill. All the breaks sound like this together. All these break samples are past old school recordings, and they aren't ones I've made myself, but I'm thinking of making a tutorial for making your own breakbeats, so if you want to see that, let me know in the comments down below. For real jungle, you also need some reggae vocals. So that's what I've gone ahead and done.
Come in. Boy, boys out. Step. Come in. Boy, boys out.
That's literally it, guys. This jungle track sounds like this now. So to wrap up, this is what we started with. And we made 3 sick tunes out of that in just under an hour. I really hope you got to see the power of sample flipping in this video. You can use these sample flipping techniques to make advanced and intricate ideas while there aren't many things going on at all. It's a really cool way to start an idea if you're less of a melody or music theory kind of person. It's also a cool way to create texture in your track because the chopping makes it sound less clean and more imperfect and raw. And it's a really fun way to mess around with production. It's also a cool thing to try out if you're perhaps dealing with some writer's block at the moment. The tips are universal for pretty much all genres as you saw in the video. It's just down to your own creativity and your own experimentation to turn them into something that fits your vision. You can also make your own sample so you can be more specific with what you want. This way no one else can use the same sample you're using. You can also find a melody on Splice if you'd rather do that. I wanted this to be a little introduction to the art of sample flipping. There's endless possibilities and opportunities out there with sample flipping. It's again just down to what you can create and what you can come up with. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you did, and if you've got any questions, let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.